Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Open the Door with Grizzly on the Hunt. Barb. Hello,
Hello.
Barb.
I hope everything's gonna. Can you hear me okay?
Huh?
Can you hear me okay?
Huh? Yeah,
Are
I
you
can hear you
joking?
okay. So sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I was actually on another show, and I clicked over. I told Barb I was live. I was like, and next time I come back, she's like gone. So Mr. Russell will be right with you. Hello, Denise. Welcome to the show.
Hi,
Hello,
Denise.
Luna. How are you doing there? Hello, Appalachian Tales of Terror.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Hello.
my laptop is not cooperating with me, so I'm taking it over to my phone. So I'm not going to be able to see. I don't know if I'm able to see the chat. That's sucks. But
Oh,
anyway,
really?
yeah, we'll see. But
Oh.
anyway, looking forward to talking to
Catherine, you're
Russell.
celebrating your husband's birthday. Happy
Oh,
birthday to
awesome.
you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mr. Gay. Happy birthday to you. And many more. There we go. We got that out of the way. Now, Gail, welcome to the show there. And Stingray sliding in the rear, coming in.
Hey.
How you doing there? Hello, Diane. Welcome to the
Hi,
show.
Diane. Oh,
So
yeah,
what do you got lined up for us tonight?
new. I have Russell Easterbrooks. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm sure you know Russell. He's a Bigfoot researcher, but he is an author. He's I don't know if he'd call him an actor. I don't know if he calls himself an actor. He was in an actual a Bigfoot documentary, a pretty popular one, Cultured Bigfoot from 2018, and he, like I said, an author. I believe he was a writer with a sports team, and he was a
Wow.
personal trainer. Yeah. So he's retired now, but I believe he's writing a book. So we'll get that information from him. But I always say he's like a walking encyclopedia. Anything you want to know about anything with Bigfoot cryptids.
Yeah. Well, let's bring him on. Mr.
Okay.
Russell, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, sir?
Hello.
Glad to have you.
Hello.
Hi, Russell. How are
How
you
y'all?
doing?
How you doing?
All right. Doing great. How are you? So you are somebody very well known, I see.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that, but
yes, you are. Yeah,
I worked for the forest. I worked for the Forest Service for a while too, and I worked with Vermont State Parks, and I also did some work as a deputy warden. So,
wow.
I've done a lot of things.
Yeah, you did. You sure do. Trying to adjust my phone. Sorry, guys. So yeah, sorry, we're running a little. I had technical difficulties with my computer.
Yeah, Mr. Russell, I apologize. I was stuck on another show. I kept telling the whole, I'm like, I gotta go. I got people waiting on me. And he's like, what? You got another show? I'm like, yeah. So I'm sorry about that, Mister. I do not like to keep people waiting. So yeah.
Yeah, I said to Russell, I'm waiting on the link. And I figured you on another show, but then when I got the link, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not working. So anyway, so here we are though, finally all together. That's good.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell us all about your encounters, your story, your back. I mean, Barb's told me so much. I'm like, wow, this is like incredible. So.
Oh, Stingray's asking, is that a Christmas cactus behind
you,
Russell?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It usually has flowers in Thanksgiving, but
oh yeah, it's beyond
Christmas. But yeah, it sure is.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting, Stingray. See, it's awesome.
So Russell, you're writing a book now. Is that correct? Are you?
Yes, I'm working on it. I'm hoping it'll be something I can get published next year, the way it's going. But but I'm trying to look into the history and see how the history affects or could possibly affect Sasquatch. Things like the California Gold Rush and the amount of people that flocked into that wilderness area and what kind of a effect that might have on the Sasquatch. Things like the Hudson Bay Company. Things like the Hudson Bay Company and the European trappers that came in.
Yeah.
And there again, a large group of people coming into the wilderness and getting sightings. So I'm sifting through a lot of information and doing a lot of reading right now, but I put together about 60, 70 pages so far. But
wow.
But I'm got quite a bit more I want to do. I'm kind of specialize in the Albert Osterman encounter. That's something I really broken down into real fine detail, and I'm putting quite a bit of stuff that's I've never seen anywhere else that I'm putting in my book about that particular sighting. So
for the viewers that may not know what you're speaking of, can you give us a little synopsis of the Osterman situation encounter, I guess? I mean,
sure. Yeah. Osterman was kidnapped by a Sasquatch. He had gone into a particular area, Toblet Inlet in British Columbia, that is pretty well known for a lot of Sasquatch activity through the Native Americans in that particular area. That particular area, or near there, Fraser River area, was also part of a big gold rush where about 300,000 people ended up being in that particular area when the gold rush was at its peak. So like the California gold rush, it was a lot of activity that would have certainly affected the Sasquatch. But Osterman was, after that, he was in the 1924. The gold rush was in 1850. Okay. But Osterman was kidnapped by a Sasquatch, carried about 3 hours.
That's right. Yeah.
And then kept in a kind of a box canyon. And they wouldn't let him leave. And he got to see some things that were pretty incredible. It makes his story, for me, it makes his story really credible. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was able to see Sasquatch speak to each other, actually communicate with the chatter talk. He's the first person to have seen that, to my knowledge.
Wow.
And I have Parkinson's disease, so that's why I'm kind of.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, no
I'm just amazed. Amazed. Number one, that coming on the show and having you. Number two, I never thought about the gold rush. I never thought about the move out west. I never thought about people trapping, because that brings up the Wendigo guy about him in the 70s trapping, right? And having this Wendigo experience. I never really thought about those. And then I remember about the guy being kidnapped. And so, yeah, and it's just like, wow. So it's just resonating. That's all.
That's kind of the focus of it. What I'm trying to do is touch base on the history effects of how they would have affected Sasquatch and all of those things, Hudson Bay Company and gold rushes and other things. I've got a lot of newspaper clippings. I've actually got a clipping that goes back to 1750, which is really good.
Wow.
Where a Sasquatch was actually taken on board ship and was brought to England to give to a particular gentleman. His name is Buffon. He wrote a number of books on mammals and was the leading person of expertise on different kinds of animals at that time. So that was really interesting. And Buffon actually wrote some letters to Thomas Jefferson and got him involved too. So all of that kind of stuff is what I'm putting in my book. So
that's going to be great. Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, that really is. Yeah. Now, Daniel Boone allegedly shot and killed one in Kentucky. That's where I'm from. I'm from Kentucky. He shot one with his muzzleloader. So, and that is actually documented here in the history books. Well, I don't know if it still is now, but it was when I was growing up. So
I have that in my book as well, about his encounter. He claimed it was 10 feet tall and talked about it having hair all over its body, and so it's a pretty good description. Yes. Yeah. I believe that was 1790 something, if I remember right.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes. Oh, more. So also, yeah, absolutely.
Also, Davy Crockett had an encounter as well. His is very interesting because his was an encounter where he was sitting on a log eating his lunch, and the Sasquatch materialized right in front of his own eyes.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And he was able to see it. And the Sasquatch actually spoke to him in English and explained to him that he needed to not go to the Alamo. It was a lost cause, and he would lose his life there.
Oh,
I
So
heard that rumor, but I didn't know if that was true or not.
yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And so, you know, that was he had written this down in a letter. It was actual writing written and down, and sent the letter to his brother-in-law. And
Oh,
yep. So it's
wow.
that's pretty interesting. And then he saw it disappear, and just kind of like in a cloud of fog disappeared.
Wow.
And that's really interesting because I've
That
never
is.
heard of anything else quite like that. And where the Sasquatch actually spoke to him in a language he could understand, his own language, so, and explain to him what the future was. So
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
that
that's
puts
interesting.
that adds a lot of credence to people that, you know, think it's a
yeah, it's
mystical
like,
or
you
it's
know,
an interdimension. Yeah.
and the question would be, you know, why would the Sasquatch do that? And he describes it in his letter that it was very tall, and he explains how tall he thought it was. He used a term that's not typically known in measurement, but you can we were able to determine he was talking about a subject that was 7 to 8 feet tall, covered with hair, good description of the eyes. So, you know, that seems like what he's talking about. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Linda was bringing up, I know a lot about Mammoth Cave. What do you think about Mammoth Cave in Kentucky? Because there's still a lot of that that's not open to the public. And there's a reason why. I'm not going to speculate. I'm just saying there's reasons why. I'm not going to be in conspiracy theories. But I know that they have used that cave systems because when I was growing up, sir, I'm from right outside Louisville when I grew up. So I grew up in the country, and we used to go down to Mammoth Cave a lot. And I went down there on my honeymoon, and many moons ago, and every once in a while you'll get one of those people that were still around for 20, 30 years, like, you wouldn't believe the stuff that we found down here. And like, tell us. And they're like, well, we can't. You know, well, why would you do that to us? But so yeah, because there's actually been a lot of reports of activity around there with Sasquatch and Bigfoot around Mammoth Cave.
Yeah, I'm not too up on that. I don't have a lot of information on it right offhand. I don't know why necessarily, but it's just I have mountains of paperwork that from everything you could think of, but I don't have anything on that particular area. So I don't have anything much to, you know, that I can add to that.
Well, the information you do have, I cannot wait to see it in a book because,
yes,
you know,
definitely.
nobody I've ever talked to has ever thought about the gold rush and what he's talking about.
That's
I
right.
never
And
thought about that.
It had to have a big effect on them. You know, the sightings should have been a pretty more commonplace. Unfortunately, at that time, a lot of people weren't able to read and write, and paper was scarce, and so all these type of things. So and so it didn't lead to a lot of sightings getting written down, but there was some. People made journals and stuff, so there was some stuff that I have been able to find. And the same with the Hudson Bay Post, because that goes back to the 1670s. And there again, there's some stuff out there, but it's pretty limited because a lot of this stuff didn't get written down. Now, the Native Americans knew about it, obviously, but they passed everything down orally. So they didn't write much of anything down unless you're going to talk about, you know, glyphs or something on some rocks and things like that. But
yeah, no, that actually makes sense. And then that's the information we're getting from the Indian people or the Indian tribes now. It's just everything's oral, but they're still so limited on what they give us. And, you know, we talked about this on other shows, Mr. Russell, is they still call us white man. And I don't take offense to it because of what has happened and so forth, but it's like, we are not ready to know the truth. and because they have lived with them for eons.
Right.
And,
Yep.
you know, my family came over in the 1800s from Germany, the Ottomans, and the Otts and the Schlagers and the Dots. And I can tell you how they populated, how they went across America. And so, so I would be very intrigued to see your book as well.
Yes. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And that's what I tried to do, is pick something. It's an area that I'm interested in. I love history. So I'm quite a history buff. I've written articles for different magazines on economics of the colonial times, colonial living, and other things besides Sasquatch. But it all kind of ties together when you think about it, because it's like all these people. The Lewis and Clark expedition is another one. There was supposedly some information in that diary that Thomas Jefferson removed. So there's some question about that. So, but there again, it's another one of those things where a group of people went across the country, and would have had some sighting opportunities. So,
Linda Judge is asking you: are you a telepathic?
No.
Okay. Hey, Twisted Witch, hello. So I didn't know if she was communicating or you all was communicating, because that's happened before on my shows, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it has. It has.
Maybe
it has.
Not that I know of, but maybe it's a matter of frequencies. I was speaking with Ron Moorhead the other day, and it's like, because I found out recently that he actually flew his plane over the area that Albert Osterman was kidnapped, and actually spent some time trying to find the area where he might have been kept. He wasn't successful necessarily, but still it was pretty interesting, some of the things he was able to convey to me about flying over the area and looking at it. So
yeah, Mr. Moorhead's one of our admins in a couple of our Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And
he's a good guy.
He really is.
Oh, great. He's great.
And they were asking me some questions on the last show, Mr. Russell, and like I told them, and when Ron and I had an actual conversation before we did our show together, and like he told me, and like I tell people, if you'd asked me 15, 20 years ago what I thought about them, I would tell you that I would think they're just primates out in the woods and everything. And, they're not intelligent and so forth. Yeah. And then when you come out with this book about quantum mechanics and everything, and it's like, and he told me, he was like, Grizzly, he said, I would laugh at you and tell you you're nuts.
Yeah.
He says, but now with the vibrations and everything, he's like, you had to step back. He's like, not think outside the box, Grizzly, but we had to think over the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to hear that from somebody from his reputation and all of his experiences and his encounters, that resonated with me very hard. And then seeing videos from Barb, hearing everybody else's encounters that we come across, and seeing what I've seen in my encounters, and seeing what I've seen in the woods. And Mr. Russell, and I tell her, and people are laughing, I don't go in the woods alone anymore. I'm sorry. I do not. After what I seen, what I saw, and how they can disappear and cloak. And talk to people, how they get run up on, and they can feel them breathe on them, and don't see nothing. No, I'm good. No, I'm fine.
Their cloaking is something interesting. That's something where you're probably looking. You have to recognize the human eyesight on the vision scale is such a small area.
Yes.
That it's not. I would expect that Sasquatch, given his eyesight at night, has much better eyesight than ours. So he can probably see our aura around the electromagnetic field around our body. I think he can see that. So if you go out in the woods and just sit down up against a tree and just sat there, that glow of your aura, that light, because it gives off a light that we can't see, I think he can see it.
Yeah.
So I also think he can see the cameras, the game cameras and stuff. There again, they use the they give off an electromagnetic field, even though it's very small. It's still it is light, and that light is, so it's like tying a flashlight to a tree.
Yes.
So So they can see stuff that we can't. So, you know, when they go into a cloaking kind of scenario, they're actually, if you could reach out and touch them, they'd still be there.
Oh, okay.
But you
I don't want
can't
to touch
see
them.
them.
I don't want to touch them. No, I don't
No,
want to touch them.
no, but I'm just saying, it's like,
Yes,
I think that they're still there. You just can't see them.
Okay. All right.
Luna wants to know, do you think maybe people called the Bigfoot cavemen? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. I didn't know you was going to read that, Barb. I apologize. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't, there again, I don't know that much about that, what you were talking about with the cave there in Kentucky.
No, cavemen like Captain Caveman, you know, like the old cartoon, you know, because that's what a lot of people think of, is that they're ignorant, they're Neanderthals, that they're missing the. But I mean, what is your perspective and take on that?
Oh, they're highly intelligent, and they have some abilities that we don't understand. They're able to use infrasound, and they can actually use it. It's not like a lion. A lion has infrasound. When he roars, he gives off infrasound. I think the Sasquatch can actually turn it on and off when they want to. So maybe as much by the way he uses his voice or something allows him to be able to throw that infrasound and certainly affect a person that, you know, it gets thrown at. So, but they are highly intelligent. You know, they can mimic anything out there, whistles and all the Native American masks on the West Coast. You see a lot of them that are all with the lips puckered up. That's because of the whistling that they're able to do to mimic birds and all kinds of things. So it's just, there's so much they can do that we don't understand. That, you know, it's kind of out there to some people, but it's like they are very, very, very intelligent.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to, I mean, you really have to just come into this with an open mind, I think, because there's just things that cannot be high standing stones. There's things that just cannot be explained.
Right. We can't explain it. We don't have enough information.
Yes.
I mean, if you're looking at orbs, it's like, what do we don't know much about them. We know that they are a certain size, a certain color, but we don't know their mode of operation, how they're able to move around, what their energy consumption is. We don't know what their link with Sasquatch is, if any. There's just so much we don't know, and that makes it impossible to research something when you have so little to work with.
Right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I totally agree with you on that, Mr. Russell. And when we encounter people, you know, and I tell people all the time, welcome Norma, is that you know, you have to be open-minded. And Ron and I talked about this, and some other people that are big investigators, and even your people in your local area, they'll tell you have to be open-minded, because you have to take science and throw it out the window. Because we know that things exist that should not exist. We know things walk upon this earth that should not walk upon this earth, because we were told by man that it cannot be possible. We are told by scientists about black holes and wormholes that do not exist. And lo and behold, guess what? It became reality. Yes. So, you know, so I tell people, take everything that you're taught and toss it. You know, you have to be open-minded. You know, now some of the stories that we hear, you know, Mr. Russell, just like you're like, wow, you know, really? But when you hear these stories across America over and over from people from law enforcement, from state agencies, doctors, attorneys, judges, you know, authors, people in high standing in society, and you're like, you're going to call these people liars and nuts? I'm like, no. There's something going on. So
and these people are eyewitnesses, and in a court of law, eyewitnesses can make a difference, for certain, to put a person in jail. So, you know, when you're looking at an eyewitness that's talking about the Sasquatch, now maybe they don't have all the particulars and information correct of what they saw because they were frightened or they were running the wrong direction or whatever.
Right.
But you have to listen to the report and listen to all that you did get from them.
Yes.
And for me, I'm looking for similarities, and the more similarities I can find, the more that goes into the database of things that you can keep falling back on as information that you can reuse again. There's a number of things. I have I've done some work on keeping track of, I would ask people that had sightings, especially women, what color their hair was. And I've seen with my numbers that I've been able to accumulate that blondes and light haired, could be gray or white hair as well, are like 70% of the women that have Sasquatch sightings. Now, it's just an anecdotal exercise because I don't know how many people and I don't know how many had blonde hair and how many have different color hair. I don't have any of that information. So it's just anecdotal, but it's interesting to hear it when you talk to a person and say, okay, well, what's your hair color? Oh, okay, it's blonde again. So
yeah. It's just what your data is showing, and I've heard that as well.
And I gave some of that information to Christine Herbert, and she's put together a really nice article with some of my information and some of my statistics, and I'm going to put that in my book too. She's letting me put it in my book. So.
Oh, great! Yeah, I met Christine. It'll be 2 weeks. Yeah, because she runs the Legend of Sasquatch store up in Forks. Yeah, she's great. Yeah.
She's written a number of articles too.
I've heard that too. And I was talking to a guy from a First Nations member, and he said he had brought that up because of the encounters on my property. And I said that I've told you this, Russell, before I even knew anything that was anything like or even suspected that this could be related to Sasquatch, that sometimes my like if I'd have my hair in a ponytail and it would get tugged, not violently, but enough that I know something has tugged at it, and he said he had mentioned about if this could be, a Sasquatch thing, like if they're cloaking or whatever. And I don't know, I really had a hard time. I still have a hard time thinking, wow, could they be that close to me and that happening? But he had said, as they may not be used to seeing people with this color hair. They're used to seeing a lot of First Nations, Native Americans, and anyway, that was his theory possibly, but
and there again, that's a for instance where it's obviously cloaking, but it can reach out and touch you. It's still there. You just can't see it.
That's really whoa.
And to be that close to you is pretty pretty unnerving, really, to think that they are.
Yes.
But,
because I've thought about like maybe is it haunt? Is the property, this has never happened in the house, but is the property, is it haunted? Because I would get like a tap on the shoulder, or like, when you feel like somebody comes up behind you and they're standing there and you turn around and like, well, nobody's there, that kind of thing, and the tugging on my hair, and nothing that scared me, but just like, what's going on? But anyway, so Russell, have you ever seen a Sasquatch?
No, I have not.
No, with all the research.
Sadly, I say I have not. And I used to be outdoors a lot. Like I said, I worked with the North Carolina Forest Service. I worked with Vermont State Parks and did some deputy work with the game warden. So I was outside a lot, but I just have never had an actual sighting, which I'd like to, but I can't get out in the woods as much with my Parkinson's now. I have a hard time walking and stuff for any great length. I mean, I can go a couple miles, but that's about my limit. So so sadly, I wish I had. I would like to. I have so many questions that when I see one, I want to be looking at all these things that I'm thinking about. So
right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And it's very interesting because what I'm still stuck on your research, because you put me in a different direction I never really thought about, and I'm glad you're doing that approach. And it's interesting to hear some of your theories and stuff, because you're not the only one thinks the same way about how they act, how they think. Now, like I said, after seeing them cloak from Barb Sheep's video and being a hunter in the woods and hearing things and not seeing things and now seeing what they do or are capable of doing and not realizing that's what it is. And it's like, man, I used to go out there by myself for miles and go deer hunting. And it's like, I was crazy back then. And, and it's just like now, because I never forget my dad and I walked in this one area, Mr. Russell. He's like, son, you smell that? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, the deer were just here. And it was like, today, BS, Dad, that was not deer. That was Sasquatch. I don't care what that was, skunk ape, where you want to call it. That was not a deer, a herd of deer. So, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So it's you learn, and you actually, and that's one thing I like about people like you, is that you share what you're learning and what you learn from history to others.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be very crucial to everybody,
I
because
put
there's a lot of unanswered questions out there.
Right. I put a lot of stuff on Barb's her page for her group.
Yes.
I try to, I'm a member of several other groups too, that I put stuff on there as well. But I always try to add stuff that, little tidbits of things that I found through my research and put it on there. So it gets the thinking process going with people. It's like, you see the technology is going at such a fast rate that, history is being swallowed up and lost.
Yes.
And I think we need to spend more time looking at history and what we have learned from that, and then take it forward to what we do today, instead of pushing that back as behind us,
right,
moving forward, always looking for the next big encounter. And it's like, I think that's a huge mistake for missing out on the history. But there again, it falls into play with technology and the way technology is going in this country and in this world. So it's but I think it's important, and so that's the aspect that I try to look at a lot. So I spoke at the 2016 Virginia Bigfoot Conference. You can see that if you like, and Google my name on YouTube, and you can see my presentation back then. I've learned a lot since then. Some things I would do different, but other things I spoke about was things like muscle structure. I mean, we don't need a body to look at some of the stuff we're looking at. I mean, we can see stuff. It's like, the trapezius muscle and how it's attached up on the head near near the ear. It has to be there. I had a person ask me the other day, what do you mean it has to be there? It's like, well, his shoulders are so wide that the trapezius muscle attachment has to be higher up to keep his shoulder and his hand from dragging on the ground. For humans,
I never thought about that, Barb.
Yes. Yeah.
For humans, our shoulders are closer together, so the attachment is lower, and it does the same thing about supporting and holding your arm and shoulder up.
Yeah.
But with Sasquatch, his shoulders are 4 feet apart. That's why the attachment has to be up higher. So it's a real tip-off when you see photographs that don't have that, because that is something that you can't, it's physics. You have to have that. If the shoulders are that wide, that attachment has to be higher on the head.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I learned from Russell. It's just amazing.
I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, that just, and this is what we just talked about on the last show, Mr. Russell, that was on before I came onto this one, is that what's sad though is that with AI, artificial intelligence, right?
Yep.
It's hard to tell anymore what is real and not real, because years ago we used to be able to look at them and like, oh, look at the pixelation, it's pixelated. It's been cut and cropped. Now you can't.
That's
but
right.
Tidbits like what you're saying, I really never really thought about that. So yeah, that's very interesting.
Yep.
So, and everybody in the audience is loving you talking, by the way. They're so fascinated.
Somebody who,
I mean, they're loving it. So,
said he's brilliant. He's a genius. Yep.
Yes. Yes.
We were looking, Russell, we were looking at a picture that Grizzly had shown us last night. It was like of a little, baby, like Sasquatch footprint. And can you explain to us as far as the anatomy of, so it looked like the baby's toes had kind of gripped into the dirt, right, as it was walking?
Yeah, here,
there
let
was
me bring it up.
a track. Oh, yeah, because there was a track, couple of tracks, right, Grizzly?
Yeah, it was weird. It was the bigger tracks were in the vicinity, but it was like this juvenile was like, somebody said it looked like it was running.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I didn't even think of that. I just opened up, and I don't know why. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. I keep closing out my Facebook. I don't know why I do that. I don't know why I just leave it open. So bear with me here. I think I sent it to Chris here. But yeah, I would love to have your take on this.
The toes curling or something that you see even on the big tracks occasionally, because that's an important aspect of how they motivate around. If there's a slope or any kind of an upgrade, those toes are very flexible, and the big toe especially is much larger. That's another good tip off on track signs when you see it. If the big toe is really much larger than everything else on the foot, then that's a real key, because they need that to get around during rough terrain. I mean, Dr. Meldrum has talked about that. He's also talked about the mid-tarsal flex and how that helps, because it keeps more of the front foot, a part of the foot, on the ground, and the heel comes up off the ground. But when I spoke to Dr. Meldrum about it, I was talking to him about how the Sasquatch squats. This is another thing I've done a lot of work on, and looked at sightings, but there again, this squatting down is something that they do instead of bending over at the waist. They don't bend over at the waist and pick up something off the ground. They squat down and then pick up whatever they want, and then they come up. Osterman saw that during his encounter, and even commented on it, that he was surprised that such a big creature was able to go down into a squat and then stand up without using his hands.
Wow.
It's important also to recognize from a wildlife point of view that, you want to keep your head up and your eyes looking around so you see what's going on. When you bend over at the waist, your head is down, your eyes are looking at the ground, and you don't know what's going on around you. So it's always important that an animal keeps its vision. And for Sasquatch, it's the same thing. So squatting allows him to do that. So there again, it's just another small thing, but it's really interesting, because when you start looking at reports, you start stringing this together. That's what you see. They squatted. They squatted. They weren't sitting on the ground. They were squatting down.
All right, here we go, Mr. Russell. Let me hit one more button. We got it. It took me a minute to find it. I apologize.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here it comes. Now, you see how the dirt, and see the heel, and there's that big toe. But what do you make of this?
Well, the big toe's a little bit off to the side, so that's pretty interesting. It looks like that the toes have formed into a more, what would be more of an older foot instead of a younger foot. That was part of the foot had already developed, and then the rest of the foot will develop to catch up to the toes. That's what I would say with something like that.
Now, these were probably about 6 foot apart in a straight line out in the field.
6 foot. Wow, that's pretty good distance for a small track.
Yeah, roughly about 6 foot. I think it was 5.4, 5.6, somewhere around there. Yeah. So because he found the other ones, the bigger ones that were bigger than his, I don't have those photographs, but for like 15, 20 feet away.
Okay.
So, And these
Well,
were
that
like
would-
in line, like and my question is like the loose dirt that's been tossed. And that's when one of our people in the audience was like, maybe it was running or something. And that's why we got that loose dirt kicked up. What are your thoughts? And you think
Well,
this is
it
real?
could be, but I think that, you know, it could be that it's running, but I think if it was, that would probably mean that some of the track, the center part of the track would not be showing up in the dirt. And it looks like the center part of the track is showing up in the dirt, like the weight was transferred over that part all the way back to the heel, which would mean he probably had to stand on the track. So it wasn't necessarily a running posture, which I would think the running would be just the toes and just the very small amount of the front of the foot, but it would be the full width of the toes, where this isn't. This is only about, looks like about half the width of the toes, which is pretty interesting.
So what would you call it? Go ahead, Barb.
I was going to say with that size of a stride, and the size of the foot, what would you place this Sasquatch? What would the age do you think, Russell?
That's kind of hard to tell. I would say maybe a year.
Okay. All right.
Something like that, a year old. I mean, it's pretty hard to tell. Like I said, it could be that the toes have already developed into more of what and then the rest of the foot is going to catch up with the development. And the toes are so critical for them to move around in steep. This looks pretty flat right here.
Yeah, it's out in the field.
His toes still go into the ground, so there's a certain amount of weight being pressed on those toes. But the middle part of the foot is also pretty far down in the ground. It looks similar to the toes, but it's a little hard to tell, but without looking at it. But definitely very interesting. Yeah.
Now let me ask you this: and do you think this is authentic from your experience?
I would say it probably is, only because it looks different than what I would expect to see. So when I see different, sometimes that doesn't mean fake. Sometimes that means it's something different. And I think that in this particular case, like I said, I think the toes, the big toe especially, is kind of off to the side a little bit, right? And I think that's just because the toes are a little further along in this adolescence age in the process of the foot growing, because the toes are such an important part. They don't have claws. They have nails, but not claws. You can't see them in most tracks. So, but that I would think that this looks pretty good to me as interesting and something different.
And this is, and you're saying the exact same thing this investigator actually was thinking too, because they brought it to my attention, and they were like, you know, because when he found this, he's like, everybody stop, do not move. And everybody's like, you know, were we walking on something? They're like, I think we're getting ready to. And there's like, everybody stop and start looking around. And he didn't want to tell anybody what he just saw, because then he started looking ahead, and he said, you can see the stride. And it was like one in front of the other, not side by side. Right. And he was like, okay. And he said, now everybody look around. And that's when they found the bigger prints off to the left around 10 or 11 o'clock from this position, that were like on the edge of the field and coming into the field, but walking in and out. Like this one, she's like, ooh, I'm having fun or whatever. You know,
like a
just
little
running
kid
around.
would do.
Yeah, right. There you go. Basically.
Yeah,
so, but he was so intrigued because he's never seen one like that before either.
Right. And as Diane said, I mean, the loose dirt and everything may play a role in it to some extent, but the middle of the track looks as deep as the toes to me. So that would mean that the foot came straight down and made a good impression into the ground. And then as it pushed off, the toes went into the ground a little bit more. The big toe splayed out to the left, and that created what you're seeing in the track, as opposed to probably running.
Yep. Yes.
Okay,
That
now
makes
that
sense.
would make some sense then. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't see small tracks like that very often either.
Yeah.
I know of a few that I've seen, but for the most part, you don't see the small ones so much. So I'm
Why
not
do you
sure
think that
why, but
is?
yeah, I
Oh,
don't know why that would be. I mean, there's obviously small ones around, so it's like,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't
Maybe they're
know.
carried more,
Could
or
be.
I think that I have a feeling that in our backyard, I think that maybe they're setting them there overnight, like almost like a doe would with her fawn. Um, and so maybe that's why, if they're too young to be going around and, hunting or whatever they do,
Yeah.
but just to,
Yeah, I'm
kind
sure they're on a short leash. Yeah. So,
yes.
I mean, in
Yeah.
this case, it sounded like probably mom was only just, 15 feet away to one
Yeah.
side. So,
Yes.
certainly close enough to keep an eye on things. But,
Yeah.
and maybe the small ones, their track isn't going to show up so good because of their weight. I mean, that particular track, the weight of that footprint, based on what I can see and the size of the footprint and everything, was probably about 50 pounds. That's what I would
Okay.
guess.
All right. Oh,
Um,
that's so cute. Russell, are you live in Virginia? Is that right?
yeah, that's right. Yep.
Oh,
Southwestern Virginia.
okay. Are there, somebody was asking this on the show last night, specifically about Virginia. Are there Sasquatch reports of people in Virginia?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Jefferson National Forest is part of that, as well as West Virginia and Tennessee. It's a big place. That's definitely got a
Okay.
family group or a number of family groups in that area for sure.
Okay.
The other stuff in Virginia, I think a lot of it is passing through. It depends where you are. When you're over near the real western part, where they come out of the Smokies, I would think that they would come out of the Smokies and go right up into Jefferson National Forest. So, as far over as you go in Virginia, I don't know, Carroll County, and there's a couple other counties a little further over. I think there'd be more movement there. You get some movement along the Parkway, but other parts of Virginia, I don't think there's so much. But there again, when you have something, they may get pushed out of a certain area, and when they do, they pass through certain areas. Where I live in particular, there was a very good sighting, but it was about 30 years ago. So, anything new is not, nothing I'm aware of close by. There's some stuff in North Carolina, but yeah, not so much in Virginia, but they're there. They are there.
Yeah, it's interesting how if you're not in this community of people, so to speak, with that we speak freely about our encounters and exchange of information, that when you do talk to somebody and like, oh yeah, that's they've been here forever, or, this one's seen it, that one's
Yep.
seen it. There's so much that we know that goes unreported.
Right, goes unreported. And when I did the 2016 Virginia Bigfoot conference, I had a lot of people come up to me. I bet you 15, 25 people come up to me telling me about their experiences, never told anybody about it, there's nothing written down. All that information is lost. It's like, but they gave it to me and I took notes, so I have some of that. But it's amazing, when you start looking, it's probably, I hate to say it, but it's probably as high as 70% of sightings actually go unreported.
I would agree.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a tremendous amount of information that is being lost because when you're looking for similarities and stuff from report to report, you need as many as you can get. And so that I wouldn't be surprised. I would feel very comfortable in saying 70% don't get reported. Anyway,
yeah,
so
maybe upwards.
it's too bad.
Yeah, Russell, you were in the documentary Cultured Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? In 2018.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how did that come about? How did you get asked to?
Bill Lancaster is a good friend of mine.
Okay.
He actually, I met him at the 2016 Virginia Bigfoot conference. He was actually doing the filming of it, and he's the one that filmed me doing my program on YouTube, which you can see on YouTube. But yeah, I got to know him there, and that was the. I forgot the question now. I was
no, I was saying, how did that come about? Yeah. Yeah. And
so
yeah, so that cool experience.
yeah, it was a really good experience, and but I got to meet a lot of people there, and that was good. It's like, but I can't get out to those kind of things much anymore, so I kind of miss that. But
yeah, sure.
I spend a lot of time on the computer doing research and that kind of stuff. I do get outside some, but it's kind of limited.
Yeah, you really, I'll tell you, have just the best. That's what I was telling Grizzly. You just have the best, anecdotes, reports, articles, police, newspaper. Yeah. And so do you write for a Bigfoot, a publication, you can tell us that so people can look.
Okay, yeah, I did. We should talk about Ernie's account, which is when I first heard Ernie's account, I reached out to him and I spoke to him about his account. I said, "Look, this is a big deal. This is one of the better accounts I've heard." And I talked to him and questioned him on all kinds of aspects of that. He said that nobody asked me those questions before. It's like, well, it's just stuff I'm looking for information for my book. And I said, because I think your encounter is that important. And he it kind of kidded me, but he called me a Sherlock Holmes investigator. And it's kind of stuck. So I actually put a little plug in my book about that. But
that's great.
But anyway, with Ernie's account, I got it written up for him and got it published in Bigfoot Quest magazine. They were kind enough to publish it. And like I said, it's going to be in my book. It's going to be an important part. It compares very favorably on a lot of things with the Albert Osterman account. There's sign language. He sees the Sasquatch speak to another Sasquatch, so communication. The chatter talk, he had it, the Sasquatch walked right up towards him, and it was pretty close. It was about 20 feet. He was really close, and he walked right up to him and held his hand out, and he was pointing and doing sign language with what he was trying to get across to Ernie. And Ernie just stood there, and it's like he just took it all in, and it was pretty amazing. And then he saw him walk away, and he ducked under a branch, and Ernie walked down later and measured the branch to get the height, or what height he was and stuff. So there again, it's a very interesting report. And I thought it was something that needs to be written down for sure. And it's definitely going to be in my book, big part of that. So
I want to see if we can get Ernie, if I can get him, if he'll be willing to tell his story, because it is.
He would be. He's really a good guy too.
It is incredible. Oh gosh, Grizzly, wait till you hear. Whoa.
No, I would have had a heart attack and died. Someone walked up to me and started doing this. First thing I'm thinking of, law enforcement and gang signs. I'd been like, I'd been dead right there. They would have found my body.
And I think the big part of that too was that the Sasquatch was incredibly surprised that Ernie was able to sneak up on him. And because Ernie talks about him not knowing he was there, and the Sasquatch he was squatting down next to a tree while his buddies were after some deer, and they were pinch point hunting. That's what they were doing. And so when Ernie saw him, he was squatted down, so he thought it was a deer laying down or a bear or something, until he stood up. And then when he stood up, Ernie said, "Oh, it's a guy way back here. Holy cow." So I better step out, because if those deer come over the stone wall, he's liable to swing his gun around and shoot me with some buckshot. So Ernie stepped out. When he did, the Sasquatch turned and looked at him and then looked back again real quick. It's like, what the? How did you get up so close to me? He was actually surprised. And Ernie said he could see that in his face. And that's why he walked up towards Ernie. I think he really felt that Ernie was somebody that had done something that he didn't think anybody could do to him. And he did. So that came across in that sighting. And that there again, it's really important that aspect be captured. So
yes,
yeah, Ernie would be great on your show. Yeah.
And then Sibylla had done a sketch for him of what he saw, and that was incredible because it was different. It was blue eyes and
blue eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his hand was so close to him that he could see there was no marks. His hand was flat. There was no lines in his hand. He didn't have those lines. He was that close that he could see it.
Yeah, I would have died. Yep, I would have been dead.
Amazing.
Incredible.
Ernie's ex-military and stuff too. So I mean, he's
credible.
Yeah. So he's definitely very credible. And like I said, the sighting is really interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of real good aspects of that. So
very much so. Oh, yeah. We should see if we can get Russell on for our you can come on for maybe some segments once in a while in our Bigfoot news.
Yeah,
wouldn't that be great? Because man, so much information. Like, oh, gosh.
Yeah. Well, I'd be happy to. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh no, we're so thank you
it was
for
an honor. So
oh my gosh,
an honor.
Well, I'm always happy to answer questions as best I can. If I don't know an answer, I'll tell you straight up. I don't know. Or I don't have enough information to. But if I can look into it, I will. And to see if I can gather some information. And a lot of times you get ideas and stuff from other people. They start talking about something, and it's like that gives you an idea. And so when you're searching for information and going through Googling this and Googling that, if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to find the information you want. You get a lot of gobbledygook, that's stuff that's already known or something that you weren't interested in. But occasionally, if you ask the right question, it'll get you something that you feel pretty good about. And it's like, man, that's something I've never heard before. I got to get that written down.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's wild.
Fantastic.
It really is. Well, thank you, sir, for joining us. We'll make sure to have you on your other show too. Thank you, sir.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Russell. Have a good night.
Thank care.
You so much.
Good night now.
All right. Good night. Bye. Wow, that is something else. I'm telling you. Unbelievable. So
I mean, I could just talk to him for hours. And he's the nicest guy. He's so nice. So nice.
Well, I mean, I never thought about the gold rush and the
see, that's the thing. Puts on different spins. I think it's and also bringing in the historical aspect of it, because people will say, oh well, where were they before? Well, just hey, like a Native American would say, I'm sorry, like a dumb white person, where were they before the people found the big footprints in California? Well, they were here. That's not the first time.
Yeah, right.
Like, don't, that's not, where were they before that? What was there? There's only one, no, when you look at all these historical reports and accounts and things like that, they've been around. Yeah, they've been around.
Yeah, because somebody else asked me or a question. I don't know if it was on another show or the last show. Could you sneak up on one or something along those lines? And I was like, it has happened before. And they stood up, and next thing you know, the guy took off running with the camera because it scared the hell out of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they didn't know what it was. Because it just like they didn't, I don't think it resonate that it was there until it stood up and it was like, ah! And they just took off running. So,
And if that particular one maybe was, thinking about the hunt and involved in that and at the height of, of that kind of adrenaline rush. And then there's a human turn around and there's a human. So, I think that's at the root of a lot of sightings like that, where they both both the witness and the Sasquatch are surprised, you know.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That was I'd love to have him back. That's very
Yeah,
interesting.
definitely. Yep. Yeah,
Definitely gotta get his book though.
Yes, yeah. Yep.
Definitely gotta get his book. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap. So that was awesome,
Thanks,
Barb.
everybody.
Another grand slam. So yeah.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
so who we got for next week?
Next week we're gonna have Lala Bright again with her husband, her boyfriend, or fiance, right? They said they were
Fiance,
yeah. Bob McGuire. So we're gonna have her on. She is going to hopefully do a reading of a witness that I had sent. This woman's picture, and so she said I don't want to know anything else about her. I just because this witness feels that she was abducted by a UFO, but she doesn't.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
see,
doesn't really
that
like
scares me.
doesn't really like to talk about it. But anyway, so we'll see what Lala has to say about that.
All right, we'll tune back in, ladies and gentlemen, and don't forget we got that show at 9:30 tonight, and I got special guest appearance. Now, speaking of that, I went back when you said, "Hey, I can't believe you got so and so." There was supposed to be a link there for his interview, so it's not who's coming on the show, but I do have two people coming on the show that's well recognized that's going to talk. So yes.
Okay.
So I went back and redid the ad, but it didn't update on all the things. So I was like,
yeah, because I was like, oh, it's Martin Gross, cool.
Yeah, no, I was like, what? But there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tonight. Take care.
Good night, everybody. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
It's a grizzly.
Should we get out of here?
No. We're gonna watch and listen.
Action.
It's a grizzly.
Oh, shit, should we run?
No.
Action.
It's a grizzly.
Oh, shit, should we run?
Okay. It's a grizzly.
Are you sure it's not a chipmunk? Action. No, I got here. Action.
It's a grizzly.
I'm out of here.
Huh. Maybe it is a chipmunk. It's a grizzly.
Are we gonna die?
I don't know. We're just gonna sit here and listen and watch.
Let's get out of here, maybe.
Fall!